the Houston Texans. So they made a splash and the inverse of what happened where the Giants moved up with them into the back into the first round. So loved that move for them in trading back to pick up more capital. Um, and with their first pick, which was pick 34 in the second round, so they moved back from 25 to 34, they take Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State.
Loved the pick, man. Absolutely loved this pick. I in our last mock, our only mock on the channel, Dakota, it was like what we would do as GMs. I drafted Jaden Higgins in the first round because I think Jaden Higgins has the potential of becoming an X wide receiver. He's one of the few guys in this class I felt like had that potential. It's also very interesting because they already have that skill set. Nico Collins has kind of taken
Yeah.
over that role for the Texans, but I love when teams don't draft for need. You could argue they didn't need this kind of skill set in the receiving core, but they just want good players. And taking Jaden Higgins with their first pick after, to your point, trading down, picking up 2 extra third round picks to trade down with
Yep.
the Giants. Loved it, dude. I loved the process all the way through with this first pick.
Yeah, I do too. We were both big on Higgins. Loved him. Kind of wish the Titans had taken him, to be honest with you. I was hoping he was going to be there. And actually, funnily enough, the Raiders and Titans were right behind them here, and both of them traded back. And those were
Mm.
two teams that took receivers later on. So it is interesting to wonder, did they trade back because Higgins got taken right before them? And then they, in the third, pair him with his teammate, Jalen Noel, who has a bit of a different skill set. Higgins is 6'4", over 200 pounds. Noel is, the slightly smaller guy. At 5'10", 194, incredible athlete. And honestly, Jaden is also a really good athlete. He's one of those athlete and production guys. So love the fact that they took both Iowa State receivers who have very different skill sets. After Stephon leaves, the Stephon experiment went okay because he got hurt. And then with Tank Dell, unfortunately, who's looked good for the value they got him at, unfortunately, has just had some really unfortunate injuries. So they did need wide receiver depth, and they double up with the Iowa State guys.
They did, man. I absolutely love that as well. Doubling up with the Iowa State guys. They also brought in Christian Kirk, but listen, Christian Kirk, I think he's on a 1-year deal. That's not the future. I could definitely see Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel coming in and playing on this offense, dude. You get those two guys out there with Nico Collins. All of a sudden, that's looking like a terrifying wide receiving core. And like you said, Tank Dell has been an extremely useful player. He's just been hurt all the time, and you can't rely on him to be healthy because he's had so many injuries at this point. And yeah, man, I think they got a first round talent in Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel. I don't think he's a first round talent, but where they got him, I absolutely loved it, man. So great first, or I love pairing those two guys together at the next level.
Yeah, and in the middle of those two picks, everybody was projecting them to take a tackle at 25. A lot of Josh Simmons mocks there. But they end up trading up, I think, at this point. So
They
when they
did.
had traded back, they did trade back up in the second to get Ariante Ursary, tackle out of Minnesota, another one of those guys that at some point was kind of mocked late first in the second. So they still managed to walk away with a tackle that could compete to fill, really athletic guy. That could compete to fill in the void left with, the trade of Larry Tunsil.
I like this pick a lot, dude. I thought Ursary was probably the best tackle available at the time. This is a guy that wouldn't have surprised me if the tackle run started a little bit earlier in the mid-20s in the first round. If Ursary was drafted to like a team like the Chiefs in the first round, that
Yeah.
really wouldn't have shocked me at all. So getting him in this mid-second round, I loved it. Yeah, they had to trade up for him, but this is a team that was working the board all draft, man. Like you said, they were
Yeah.
trading up and down all draft long, which I like, man. They're coming up to get their guys. I don't typically love trading up for guys as we've talked about, but in this instance, I think this was a pretty big need for the Texans, man. I mean, you just trade away Laremy Tunsil. You need a left tackle of the future, or even moving over to right tackle is a possibility as well. So love the set that second round pick. I think he is going to be their future at tackle at some point.
Yeah, they did sign Cam Robinson to fill the void for left right now, but they have Blake Fisher, who they drafted last year at right tackle. So you're feeling a little in the current situation without Laramie Tunsil, so he could 100% compete for one of those jobs pretty much immediately. And you nailed it too. They probably one of the most active teams. Caserio was on the phone basically the whole draft. Like if you look at what picks they started with, they only made like genuinely two of those picks. Like they were moving up and down constantly, which I love that because you're playing the board and you walk away with a good draft because of it. Um, so continuing down in the third, they had four picks in the top 100 because of those trades. They get Jalen Smith, corner out of corner out of
USC.
USC, a little bit more productive than athlete, 5'10", 187. They pick him up there in the third, and then also get Woody Marks. So they go double up again on teams and take the running back out of USC at pick 116 in the fourth round.
They were extremely aggressive in getting Woody Marks. They really wanted him. I can't remember exactly what they gave up for that pick, but if I remember correctly, they gave up quite a bit. So they clearly have a plan for him. Like when a team is extremely aggressive for a player in the middle rounds, I always kind of assume, okay, this is a guy that they expect to come in and make an impact pretty early on. And they do. I mean, they do need. I mean, he's right now listed as their backup running back to Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon is starting to get up there in age. So I could definitely see him making an impact this year and possibly even be in the running back of the future for the Texans.
Yeah, I love that pick. I forgot he was at Mississippi State, which I think I watched him live actually before he transferred this past season when we watched Mississippi State in Knoxville. And he had his best season this past year. So you always love to see the production kind of hitting at peak. But another one of those guys who's in college for a while too. So there's always the questions around, why are you peaking 5 years into your college career type thing? But only had one fumble in his career too, which is for, Joe Mixon's not necessarily known for not doing that. So I think he has the opportunity to get some playing time immediately. And Jalen Smith could come in and play in the slot pretty soon for them as well in that secondary alongside Derek Stingley Jr. So love that. And then they take Jalen Reed, safety out of Penn State, in the sixth round. Guy who's pretty athletic, 4.49 for a safety, which is pretty solid. And then they took one of the more interesting picks. Our bias aside, but quarterback Graham Mertz out of Florida in the sixth round. And it's just interesting looking at guys that went undrafted and like guys like Quinn Ewers who went after him. It's just interesting that Graham Mertz was the guy they wanted to take a shot on to be their potential backup.
I was a little bit surprised by that. Graham Mertz also had some injury issues all throughout college.
True.
So again, I'm never gonna fault a team for taking a quarterback in the sixth round. I think it's a good process move. Just a little surprised it was Graham Mertz, considering the other quarterbacks on the board, or even some of the quarterbacks that went undrafted. To be completely honest with you, but again, it's a sixth round pick, dude. You don't expect this guy to ever play. But it's just taking a shot on the most important position in the sixth round, see if a guy can develop and, add something as far as depth.
Yeah, the injury part is interesting because like DJ Lagway's breakout this past season was because Graham Mertz got hurt and he came in and people were like, the offense is better now. But it is interesting. I mean, to your point, you always take the shots on the QBs in the later rounds. So they have a guy that can sit behind CJ Stroud and, potentially be a developmental guy to be a backup. So, and then in the seventh, they take Conte Hamilton, D-line out of Rutgers. Wasn't overly productive in college, but, a solid option. He has a decent, had a couple games where he was a little dominant. So you're just going to try to get that out of him consistently. And then Luke Lakey, the tight end out of Iowa. You always feel good taking tight ends out of Iowa.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. More athletic guy, wasn't really productive there. So we'll see what he can develop into, but depth pieces there in the seventh round.
Yeah, just more depth pieces. Drafting in volume, which I like to see. Yep. And again, it speaks to kind of their strategy throughout this draft, just moving around, picking up more picks, which I loved. But overall with this class, man, I think they got some really impactful players on offense, man. And it's interesting because if you look at CJ Stroud's rookie year, people are coming out and saying, okay, this is one of the elite rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. We feel really good about how they're going to look in year two. And he took a big step back. And so they're looking at that and saying, okay, Stroud took a step back. We're going to make some changes. We fire the OC, and then we go into the draft, and we're going to load up on offensive talent. We're going to get him 2 more receiving weapons. We're going to get a tackle in there. We also trade away his franchise left tackle, but that's
Yeah.
fine. We're going to try to replace him in the second round, which doesn't always work. But you also got some decent draft capital out of the Laramie Tunsil trade, which is a part of it. But I like the strategy, man. They realize that like we're not where we need to be from a roster standpoint, and so we need to continue to build around Stroud. And Stroud, listen, Stroud is still really good. I'm not saying
Yeah.
Stroud isn't really good, but I think it's pretty clear after year 2 that you can't definitively say he's one of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. You just cannot do that after year 2. So it makes total sense trying to load him up with weapons and try to help that offense get back to where it was in 2023.
Yeah, completely agree. Adding those pieces to help him out after trading one away. But yeah, sign a few guys in the offseason, draft a tackle, get a couple receivers in there. Need to help out your young franchise quarterback. They weren't very active in UDFAs. They only signed like 6 guys. And then going into next season, because the trade you mentioned, and with the Laramie stuff, they currently are slated to have 2 second-round picks next year. So that feels good for them as well. All right. With that in mind, what was your favorite pick for the Texans?
Man, I could
Gonna be your
really
guy,
go
right?
any of the first 3, but I got to go Jaden Higgins, man, at 34. I thought Jaden Higgins could have been a first-round talent in a receiver class that just wasn't very strong at the top. It was not a very strong receiving class. There wasn't a ton of guys. There are probably 3 guys in this class, dude, that had true X potential at the next level, and I think Jaden Higgins is one of those guys. So getting that in the second round is fantastic, in my opinion.
I'm going to go with his teammate. I'm going to say I love the process of doubling up, realizing you need to add more weapons to the offense. And I love Jalen Noel as a different skill set with his speed and his athleticism and his strength. So I love adding him alongside Higgins and getting those 2 guys in your locker room who I'm sure that played a part in this as well. As when you're going through these interviews with them, you like both those guys. Now you let them be teammates still, playing with CJ Stroud. So love that. All right. What did the consensus grading say about the Texans draft?
Right in front of the Colts at number 21 overall. Felt like this is a draft that probably could have been ranked higher on this list. Like if I ranked teams,
Yeah.
I probably would have ranked the Texans a little bit higher. But, we probably said this 1,000 times by now. But it's just a lot of good draft classes. Like, so when you're ranked at 21, you might be the bottom half or bottom half of the league, but it's still a great class in my opinion. I mean, they got better. So
Yeah. I wonder
like it.
on the same note where people, devaluing the trades, I wonder if there was some people out there who give a negative grade for not picking in the first round because they traded down. Personally love them trading down and picking up those extra picks. But I wonder if that may have played a role for some people. But yeah, I think it does come back again to this year and how well teams drafted, because I am a little surprised to see it that low. I feel like it is one of the better drafts this year. So
It's also notable that, and we talked about this before we got on air, but Thor on here, I don't know who this guy is, but he graded a D plus, which was by far their lowest grade. So that's definitely bringing it down. If you take his grade out of it,
true.
this might actually shoot up quite a bit. So
Yeah, that guy is the most sporadic grading
yeah,
by far of anybody. Just
I
handing
didn't.
out D's and F's left and right. So
I didn't love the D plus for the Texans. They definitely did better than a D plus.
yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, that is the Texans 2025 class.